us for this episode. We have a great guest on the Bitcoin.com exchange channel today. It is the CEO of Moonbeam, Derek Yoo. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Excited to hear about the project.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
One of the things that really fascinated me looking at the project was the fact that it was built off and around the Polkadot, and the smart contracts are really centric to what you guys are doing as far as the mechanics of it. But before I delve into that, I asked this of everybody. Want to know how you got sucked down the crypto rabbit hole, how you came to be earning a living in it from, what you were doing on the traditional side of life, and then we'll go into the project. But definitely want to hear about your story.
Sure. No, yeah, happy to share a bit of that. So, I think my background is actually largely not from the crypto world. I consider myself a relatively recent, entrant into the space. Most of my experience has been just building kind of regular software and technology companies, in the, originally the Web 1, but then the Web 2 space. Worked in a series of startups, even starting, I'll date myself, just going back to, the first internet wave. Did a bunch of work there, especially on the kind of data center and data center automation, in those industries. And probably most notably, back in 2006, I started a company along with another guy called Fuse. That was a regular kind of Web 2, enterprise-focused cloud technology company in the, communications area. And, I was there for a good long while. I was there for, I think, 13 years, like all told, building that company up over time. And, it came to be a big company in the end, starting from the two of us in 2006, at the time I left last year, that was a 700-person company. So, it had definitely grown, quite a lot.
Wow.
And learned a lot in that journey. And in fact, a lot of the people that are with me now today, at Moonbeam are, or PureStake, the company, we're the company building Moonbeam, came from, our people that I met on that journey. And this is where the crypto story comes in. So, the way I got into crypto is my co-founder from that company, a guy named Steve Kokinos, he left Fuse to start a crypto project. So he's now the CEO of a project called Algorand, which is another, layer 1 blockchain. It's based here in Boston, like I am. And so, when your co-founder that you've worked with for 10 years, 10 plus years leaves to go do something, you kind of are innately curious about, okay, well, where are you going again? What are you doing? And so that's what really started my interest. I started kind of pulling on the string there, and one thing leads to another, right? I mean, there's a lot of string to pull basically on this thing. So started learning quite a bit, talking to him, and got extremely interested in just the technology and the space. And then ultimately, I said I gotta get in here and do something. And I think I was ready for another, once a company gets big, it's kind of a different kind of place, right? I was ready to kind of go back to have another startup and kind of start something new again. So I mean, I'm having a blast. It's been a real breath of fresh air to kind of get into, do something new, have a new startup. And so we started last year doing work, did a lot of work in and around the Algorand ecosystem, continue to do that and provide, some services, infrastructure services for the Algorand network. And I think, though, there is a journey that we've been on even within crypto that's led us, first to Polkadot. So I would say the explanation I give there is that, we're big believers in this idea of that there's going to be multiple blockchains in the future, kind of a multi-chain future. And, we think that the problems related to cross-chain interoperability, so how all these blockchains are going to talk to each other, are some of the key challenges to overcome. And so that, kind of way of looking at the world and that concept led us pretty quickly to Polkadot. Because that I think that they have, that network has this vision of there being multiple blockchains, and the platform itself is trying to address these problems of cross-chain interoperability. So we've been kind of working in this Polkadot ecosystem for a good 18 months now plus, I'd say, and that's kind of where we came upon our idea for Moonbeam, which is a project that we're building in the Polkadot ecosystem.
It's interesting, a couple of points that you brought up before. The space is highly entrepreneurial, and you are a serial entrepreneur by definition. I think it's if you, started 2 companies or more is the metric. I don't know. But, one of the hardest things that we see in the space is team building, right? And the project success is more or less decided on the team that you build behind it and how they work together. What was fascinating is that you say a lot of the team came over from your first company that you built up, which was on the traditional side, over to the Moonbeam project. And I mean, could you have seen it any other way? Did it accelerate the growth of Moonbeam to where it is today because you had that cohesiveness already?
Yeah, I mean, multiple thoughts on that. I mean, I'd say my thinking about like hiring and team building has like evolved a lot over time, like as I've been involved in building these businesses. And I would say that, and I see this even in crypto, right, where I think when I first started, I tended to really almost overemphasize on kind of technical knowledge and like industry knowledge. So I think I still see that in crypto, where people say, oh, I got to get the guy or the gal that is already crypto knowledgeable or knows crypto. But I think what I've learned over time is that you can always teach someone skills, but kind of really kind of finding team members that have the right the same kind of values and the same kind of kind of more fundamental disposition, like they're going to fit, be a cultural fit with the team, is much more important, basically, because you can
Yeah.
always people can always learn. People can always if you start just like working in an industry, you're going to like pick it up. I mean, it may take a little bit. I mean, crypto is maybe a little bit more complicated than some other industries, but nonetheless, I mean, given 6 months somewhere, like anyone's going to learn. And you can teach people those things, but you can't teach people to like share your same values or anything like this. So
And
I
you
mean, that's
can't
where,
change that.
yeah, you can't. There's some things that like are very difficult to change. So I mean, that's kind of my philosophy. And I think yeah, I mean, if I look at my team, even, I mean, not everyone came from my previous company, or people I worked with in the past. And I've tended to just hire people from outside of the crypto industry, right? And then you teach them. And I think if you have great quality people, like they're willing to learn. And I think maybe that helps the industry as a whole, right, to bring people in from the outside.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, many people say cultures is definitely the key, and the values are definitely the winning formula for that. Let's delve into exactly what the project is going to do. You're coming out with Glimmer, which is the token coin behind the project, which is being listed on Bitcoin.com exchange. What is it that Moonbeam is out to solve or create efficiencies in, or what's the ultimate goal?
Yeah. So I would say a few things. We've been learning a lot about the Polkadot ecosystem as we've been working in it, and we're pretty excited to see a lot of the attention and traction that it's getting. And I think one thing we realized fairly early on is that there's different ways that you can build on Polkadot, and one of the ways is to do what we've done, right? So we use this framework called Substrate, which is this kind of whole framework that the team behind Polkadot Parity is providing, that allows you to build your own blockchain. And it's really cool. It's allowed us to build a lot of our core technology, and it makes sense for some people. But I would say that what we were pretty quick to realize is that it doesn't make sense for everyone, right? So for a lot of projects that are looking to build, having their own blockchain is kind of a little bit maybe overkill, or is not necessarily the thing that's needed for their use case. And so for those teams, kind of I think something that was similar and more familiar to them, like a kind of an Ethereum style or smart contract system, was a much better fit for their needs. So so I think that's what we realized is that, hey, there's a strategic spot within Polkadot to create a platform that provides a smart contract capability. And even kind of within that idea, we're big believers in this kind of Ethereum compatibility that we're working on. So we're kind of working on creating an environment that really looks and feels and behaves much like Ethereum does. And so why do we do that, right? Well, I kind of say that I call us sometimes like practical people. So the practicality is that there's all these tools that people have already created that work with Ethereum, right? So things like Truffle, Remix, MetaMask. I mean, all these kind of tools that both developers and users use to interact with that system. And so by being kind of compatible with Ethereum, all those same tools can be used, with Moonbeam. So that's a great advantage. And probably more important than that is that basically existing projects, right? So there's all these people who have already made these big investments into an Ethereum-based deployment. And that's a big part of what we do, is we're targeting basically people that as initial kind of developers to work on our platform, people that already have existing Ethereum deployments. And the message that we have for them are kind of what we kind of tell them is, hey, we can help you with a multi-chain deployment. So it's not necessarily generally the case that they're leaving Ethereum. They obviously have an existing deployment and there's users and other things. And really what they're doing is they're interested in like a multi-chain deployment where they remain on Ethereum and have a deployment there, but use the same code base to have like a Polkadot based deployment, but leveraging Moonbeam.
That's interesting. So, break that down. Like, give an easy to understand like example of when that situation happens, because I don't think a lot of people are cognizant of multi-chain deployments.
Yeah. So, well, I'll give you just an example of someone we're working with. So, for example, the project Sushi Swap is like a project that we're working with. So they obviously have an existing deployment on Ethereum, for a decentralized exchange. As well as there's a new lending and borrowing protocol, this bento box lending and borrowing protocol that they're working on. But in working with us, they're going to have a deployment of that decentralized exchange and lending and borrowing protocol on Moonbeam, and in doing so, get to Polkadot. So and the point is that there's like different assets that are on Polkadot. You have Dot, you have all of these new assets that are being created, by all the project teams on Polkadot that are generally not accessible like on Ethereum. So, it kind of makes sense from their point of view. It makes sense to have, an instance of their deployment, that can address these different assets that are, in the Polkadot ecosystem. I'd say the other thing too is that obviously you can maybe hit a different kind of user because the fees are so much less. Basically, are going to be so much less. So there's certain users that are not well served on Ethereum today, especially ones where there's smaller trade amounts or smaller, kind of transaction amounts. So that's another thing that we see projects wanting to do is find a solution for those kinds of users.
Yeah, and those things have particularly the fees have just they've been problematic, particularly over the last couple months, but definitely through the whole year. And how do you guys go about solving for that type of issue?
Yeah, I mean, it's just simply that like the fees are like less expensive like on Moonbeam. And I think, I mean, we're kind of emulating kind of like a lot of these Ethereum features, like, and, but the gas fees are going to be like substantially lower, as we're starting out for sure. And so that's obviously a big benefit. Now, I would say though, that what a lot of people have in mind that are working with us is it may be the case that they ultimately want to get to be their own parachain, their own blockchain, right? As I was describing before, that may not have been a good fit up front, but ultimately would be a good fit as they get more users and kind of want to have more control over their environment. And so there's kind of this upgrade path that exists on Polkadot that doesn't exist on other networks. So you can start with a smart contract based deployment, but you can kind of evolve to be your own application specific blockchain, and that's kind of the ultimate in scalability, right? Is to have your own your own blockchain that's specifically designed and optimized for your use case.
And so with that, then what are we talking about? Instead of, let's say, more forking in the future, it would be more migrations in the future, simply where, let's say, one project started out on Ethereum, right? It's a low barrier of entry. They get themselves going, but then as they build critical mass, to your point, and they need additional features or want to put in different permissions and protocols, going into their own blockchain is a natural progression, right? So I guess then from that point of view, it would be a migration from their, let's say, if they have their token on Ethereum to their own blockchain going on, much like Aave and Len did and stuff like that in DeFi space. But is that how you perceive or how you want the future to be?
I would say that what I see for the most part is not necessarily a full-on. Most of the projects we're working with are not interested in migrating from Ethereum, but they are interested in basically. I think what this last summer's run up in gas prices on Ethereum, due to the yield farming and these other kind of DeFi led activities. I think it made it clear that hey, just having an Ethereum layer one only strategy is probably not viable, right? So I mean, yes, you can serve a whole bunch of use cases and users with that kind of approach, but you're going to be missing, even for a successful project, you're going to be missing out on some set of users and use cases that you just can't serve well. And so that's why I think there's a moment right now where people are trying to figure out, okay, well, what is my strategy beyond just Ethereum layer one? And that's where you see a wide variety of different things being considered. For example, there's all this work around layer 2 and kind of rollups, and this is where I think looking at other chains like Polkadot and others is something that people are open to now. And for us, I think while there's different pros and cons to all of these different approaches, I mean, for us outside of Ethereum, Polkadot is definitely like, I think the most interesting ecosystem out there in terms of organic adoption, growth, interesting things happening, new projects starting. So that's kind of where we wanted to, kind of be and spend our time.
Okay. And as the CEO of a project that's blockchain based and has its own crypto component that's coming out, what do you see as the biggest challenges? As you've gone through the Moonbeam project from starting it, that may be the same or may be different from your previous company. But yeah, what are the hurdles and how do you adapt to them?
That's a good question. I think, I mean, several things come to mind. One is I would say that, it's definitely the case that the technology in this area is all very, very new. And, you're often just on the bleeding edge, figuring things out, hitting bugs, getting stuck, trying, addressing those issues and then kind of going back to, to do more work. That's something that I would say took some getting used to because, I think when you're in the Web 2 space building, I mean, things are like much more mature, right? So you have cloud services, for a lot of things, it's point and click. So that's definitely a big change. I would say that on the engineering side, there certainly is a specialized skill set that's needed. So I do spend a lot of my time recruiting, I would say, particularly in the engineering area. That's like another challenge. But, when I step back, some of the key observations I'd say in crypto that strike me coming from a more mature Web 2 area are that one I would say for sure is the end user experience. So if I look at my last company where I was in terms of end user experience, we probably a third of my product team was devoted to end user experience. So that would be designers, UX researchers, people working on iterating on kind of front end designs, and you come to crypto and then there's like a person if you're lucky, right, in the team, right, and like sometimes none. So I mean, this is where I think there's like a big gap in like the level of kind of energy and effort going towards kind of this end user experience, when you compare non-crypto world to kind of crypto world. And so that's something that while we're an infrastructure company, that's something that we're mindful of, and we're trying to support projects that are kind of tackling these problems, because I think that that cannot be underestimated on how important that is for like adoption, right? When people are wondering about adoption, sometimes it's the worst technology with the better user experience, they're not going to get the adoption, right? Because they just are worried about how to get users like using the system and not have all this specialized knowledge.
Yeah, no, it's I think that's a key. Those are key points actually that translate just into the traditional world as well with any other service or product, right? There's a certain methodology to satisfying the end user and how that cycle goes. What I want to do is in closing this up is ask you, where do you see, because on the traditional side, you have a lot of metrics of history that you can say, hey, where do you see yourself in 3 years? In crypto, and when you're building cutting edge services and technology, it's almost a guessing game, right? You're rubbing the crystal ball to see what the surroundings are going to be. But where do you see Moonbeam in 3 years as far as in the space? And if you want to give a little prediction on what that space looks like in 3 years, I'll take that too.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I have many thoughts here, but I mean, I'll focus on one, which is that I think of a lot of like analogies, right? I think in terms of analogies sometimes, right? And I think about how just basically computing infrastructures evolved over time, and kind of compare that to where I see blockchains. And for me right now, blockchains are kind of it's almost like they're considered to be these like islands, right? Like where you have these blockchains and app. If you're a developer, you're choosing one, and it's this huge decision. And then when you're on one, you're just on that one, and maybe you move to another one. And it's almost like it's like back in the 1970s when you had like different computer platforms, and it was a big decision. Hey, I'm going to deploy on an IBM or on a digital equipment PDP-11, or
I had to commit.
Yeah,
you had to
you're
give a
committing.
commitment.
But if you think about how things evolved, I mean, the computers became much more numerous and specialized, right? And then applications started to kind of span multiple kinds of systems, and you had multiple more specialized systems and these layers of abstraction. So that's kind of the trend that I see, is that, you know, we're going to move from having this few number of blockchains to many more, and they're going to become increasingly specialized, and they're going to be kind of you know, increasingly kind of like rolled up to like higher, you know, higher and higher level services. So, I mean, that's probably not a 3-year prediction. That's more of a maybe 10-year prediction. But you know, that's kind of a large part of the reason why, you know, we're working where we are, is because we see kind of the underlying tools that you need to create these like new specialized systems. That's like substrate in the case of Polkadot. And then you have this environment where these specialized systems can kind of interoperate. And so that's the, you know, we're kind of just playing one part of this, like in this larger system. And, you know, I see us kind of specializing for now in this Ethereum compatibility and providing for an easy on-ramp. But over time, I see us specializing in kind of being able to combine services from all of these different specialized blockchains together before they're presented to the user. And so that's kind of this kind of you know, specialization and increasing, you know, increasingly specialized systems that get combined. That's kind of the trend that I see and where I see things headed.
Very cool. You know, and folks, Moonbeam's information is all going to be in the description. CEO Derek Yoo, he has been generous with his time today, but check out the description. You can go find out everything you need to know about the project. Glimmer, ticker GLMR, is coming out on Bitcoin.com exchange for listing and available to trade soon. So keep your eye out on that. But Derek, thank you so much for joining us and taking time out of your schedule. Really appreciate it, and looking forward to the launch of the coin. Looking forward to you know, more news on the project, and I think what you guys are doing is actually really particularly interesting and useful in this space. Thank you.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for having me.
Our pleasure.